What's up, childrens? Old man shouting at clouds. Old man shouting at clouds. Topic of today's conversation is going to be picking your battles. This is something that, once again, there's sort of a common thread between some of these videos where I'm going to talk to you guys about things that I even need to work on, right? Okay, I'm an adult and I don't have this fully mastered, but it's a super important thing to figure out. So, what do I mean by picking your battles? Well, in countless interactions in life, with parents, with teachers, with managers, with police officers, hopefully not very often, but yeah, the chance exists. You might have a difference of opinion with somebody, and you have a choice in those situations. Do you fight that fight or do you not fight the fight? And to be clear, there's for sure times when you definitely should fight the fight, even if it's going to be unpleasant, even if it could be messy, but the fight is worth having. And then on the other side of the bell curve, there are fights that are not worth having, okay? And there could be any number of reasons why the fight's not worth having, right? Maybe it's not worth having because you have no shot of winning, okay? Now, normally I'm not the guy who's going to stand in front of you and tell you that giving up is the solution to very many things. But sometimes it is, okay? So, there are some quintessential examples of times where the fight's just not worth having, right? You'll often hear people say that discussing politics or religion is one of those times, right? Like you're not going to change somebody's mind on their religion, most likely. So arguing with them about it's not a very productive pursuit. And unfortunately, I wish it wasn't this way, but it does seem to be. Politics is another one like that, where you could have the greatest argument in the world, but you're probably not going to change that person's mind. So you have to decide if the costs of having that argument anyway, knowing you're probably not going to change their mind, are worth what you're going to get out of it. And that calculus is worth doing before you get into a headlong argument with somebody, okay? And what motivated this? Some arguing this morning on the way out the door about putting on shoes. Like, come on. Is that the hill you want to die on? Like, how hard is it to just put your shoes on? And this brings us to a larger thing, right? Which is, okay, so in individual moments, yes, it's important to ask yourself the question of, is this fight worth having? Like, am I going to get anywhere? So break it down at a really basic level, right? Let's assume you're right about whatever you're talking about. Does it matter if you're right? Are you going to change that person's mind? And are there any consequences to having the argument, whether you're right or wrong? Okay, so a perfect example of this would be you're in school. Your teacher tells you to stop talking. And maybe you weren't talking, okay? Maybe someone was talking to you and you were trying to pay attention and let's give you all the benefits of the doubt. Let's say someone else was talking to you, you were trying hard to listen, but the teacher blamed you for it, okay? That would be frustrating, absolutely. And I could understand why your initial reaction would be to argue your case, right? Say, I wasn't talking, teacher. It wasn't me. They were talking to me. I was trying to pay attention. I'm innocent. Okay. Is it likely you're going to convince the teacher of that? In my experience, no. I didn't have a whole lot of luck convincing teachers of things like that. And, generally speaking, if they're blaming you for it, even if you didn't do it that time, you've probably been guilty of it before, or they wouldn't be assuming it was you talking. Okay, that's a whole different rabbit hole we could go down. That's why credibility matters a lot. But again, let's just assume you weren't. Are you going to convince them? Probably not. Are there additional consequences you might get other than just a telling off by arguing with them further? Like they're already annoyed because they've called So, like, whether it was you or not, someone was talking out of turn and it's annoying them to the point where they feel like they have to stop class and comment on it. So they're already irritated. Are they going to be less irritated now that you're arguing with them about it? Nope. They're going to be more irritated. What you could do in that situation is understand you're probably not going to win that battle. Arguing is probably going to make it worse. If you absolutely feel compelled, if you feel a massive injustice is being put on you, bite your tongue, say sorry, and just maybe turn to your friend and be like, stop talking to me. And then pay attention for the rest of the class. And maybe after class is over, go approach your teacher and say, listen, I understand. I know I've done some things wrong in the past. I know maybe I've talked out of turn in class, but it really was not me talking. My friend was talking to me and I was trying to pay attention. And I just didn't want to argue with you in the moment because I knew you were already frustrated. I'd be willing to bet your teacher might actually appreciate that. But that's the way to approach that if you are going to approach it. Another approach to that is just to simply bite your tongue, feel a little harshly done by, that's okay. But maybe double down on behaving well in the future here so that the teacher doesn't assume it's you who's disrupting class. But that's an illustrative example of when it doesn't make sense to argue because A, even if you're right, you're probably not going to convince them. And B, arguing may have its own consequences, so it's not worth doing. And another thing that's critical to understand about this in picking your battles is if you never pick your battles and you argue about everything, first of all, people's patience for you arguing is going to be like non-existent. You're going to be permanently walking on thin ice with them. And this is something that I really want you guys to grasp because you sometimes wonder, I think, why we have no patience for your arguments. And I want you to try to put yourself in our shoes and the shoes of your teachers and your coaches. When we get pushback on almost everything we ask you to do, so we ask you to clean your room. Why? I don't want to. I just cleaned it. I don't feel like it. It's not messy. Whatever. Fold the laundry. I don't want to. I just did it. I'm busy. I'm blah, blah, blah. Push back on that. Hey, can you put your dishes in the dishwasher? I don't want to do that. Can you clean up the mess you made? Like, when every single thing we ask you to do turns into a battle, guess how likely we are to listen to your argument, even if you're right, okay? Even in the off chance that you have a good argument, we're going to be so sick of you arguing with us about everything that we're not even going to care. We're not going to listen. And we're going to not want to give an inch to you because that'll only encourage you to keep arguing more. Instead, if most of the time when we ask you to do something, you're like, okay, you got it. You got it, Dad. Hey, can you go clean your room? You bet. I'm on it. Drop what you're doing. Go clean your room. Hey, can you go hop in the shower quick? You haven't taken a shower all week. Yep, you got it. I'm on my way. Then if that was the default setting, if that's how you acted 80% of the time, then when you pushed back against us, we'd be a lot more likely to listen. We'd be like, oh, normally he's very agreeable. Normally he doesn't give us a hard time. Normally he just, when we ask him to jump, he says how high. Like, if you push back, if that person pushes back, you're going to be like, oh, whoa, hold on. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I've done something. Maybe I've overstepped. Like, okay, I'm going to be willing to hear you out. But if every single thing, including very reasonable requests like, hey, you're about to leave the house, you should put some shoes on, like, frankly, things we shouldn't even have to tell you at this point. If you're pushing back even on that, we're not going to want to hear about it. No one would. You wouldn't. That's what you got to also think about is how would I react if someone else was treating me like this? Like, if every time I asked my friend, hey, man, can you help me out with this? No. Hey, can we play a different game for a little while? We've been playing what you wanted. I want to play something else for a little while. I've played along with what you wanted to do. Can we do what I want to do now? No. how likely are you going to be when they ask you for something to be like, yeah, sure, of course? No, you're not. You're going to be like, you never compromise with me. I'm not going to compromise with you. So that's it's like a really important trait to develop as a human being just for interacting with anyone. Forget about authority figures like parents and teachers and police officers for a second. Anybody you engage with, friends, people you want to date later on in life. If you dig your heels in on absolutely everything, that is exhausting for other people to deal with because you come across as a person who's totally self-centered and completely unwilling to hear anybody else's thoughts on anything. And that's not the type of people, that's not the type of person other people are going to want to be around in any setting. Not professionally, not at school, not hanging out as a friend or dating later on when you guys are worrying about that. So the sooner you can get into the habit of defaulting to agreeableness, now I'm not, the better it's going to be. Now, I am not suggesting that there's never fights worth having. There are fights worth having, okay? If you're getting, like, what's a good example? Okay, let's say that somebody is telling you, this is a ridiculous example, but it does happen, but some core value that you have, let's say your religion or something. Let's say that let's say you're firmly Christian and somebody is trying to convince you that you should become an atheist. Okay, that might be a fight worth having. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Here's why I believe what I believe, and I'm not changing my mind for you. Okay, so stop. Leave it alone. You want to be an atheist, you go be an atheist. Or conversely, let's say you were the atheist and they were trying to beat you over the head about Catholicism. Okay, well, you see it how you see it, I see it how I see it. Leave me be. My decision has nothing to do with you. That's a fight worth having, okay? Or somebody's putting down your friend and you can tell it's hurting them and you stand up for them. That's a fight worth having, okay? Or if something truly unjust is happening, those are fights worth having. But again, if you push back on everything, then when you push back on something that matters, it's just like white noise to everybody because they're like, well, you would argue about everything, right? Not to single you out, buddy. I love you lots. But Sam, we joke around with you that, and somewhat joke, but somewhat we're like half serious when we say it. We're like, you would argue with us if we told you the sky was blue. Well, that's the kind of situation that I'm talking about where it's like, you argue about so many things that don't matter that when you argue about something that does matter, no one wants to hear it anymore. They're like, you argue about everything. So it's hard to take it super seriously when you argue with something because you're like, you push back on everything. Of course you're going to push back on this. And it makes it like takes your credibility down with people. And that you may see that when you're like, hey, you come home and you tell us, oh, my teacher was mean to me today. And we're like, okay, were they mean to you or were you doing something to earn them holding you accountable for your behavior? Because those are two different things. No, I didn't do anything wrong. And we're like, bro, we see how you treat us. I see how you treat your coaches. Like, you expect me to buy your story here? Like, it'd be different if it was consistently like agreeable behavior, and sometimes you give us a hard time. You're like, well, you guys don't come down on Maddie like this. Like, Maddie's a bit more agreeable. Oftentimes when we ask Maddie to do something, she just goes and does it. So you're right. When she does push back, we have a little more patience left. Our battery has a little more charge on it when she pushes back. Whereas, like, if you constantly run the battery to zero all the time and then you push back, it's like there's no more patience left to put up with this. You're going to get a bad reaction at that point. Instead of us debating it, you're just going to get shouted at until you listen, or you're going to get consequences until you decide you've suffered enough and you're just going to listen. That's not what you want, okay? So that's what the point of this video is picking your battles. Like, figure out what things are worth arguing about and which things it's like, you know what? Okay, whatever. Even if you're wrong, what I'm going to get out of arguing with you is probably not worth what it might cost me. So I'm just going to, okay. Even if I don't understand why I have to drop what I'm doing right now and do what you're asking me to do, whatever, fine. I'll just do it. It's not that big of a deal. I'll get it done, move on with my life. That's probably a good attitude to have. And then when the time comes where something really does matter and you push back on it, we're going to be a lot more receptive to that. And so will other people in your life. So listen to this one, please. Take it seriously. It will help you so much in life. Not learning to master that will cost you more than you realize. So I love you very much. I hope this one helped. Talk to you next time.